Welcome to VCR, a vintage cinema rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers. I'm Blake.
I'm Jason. It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses.
Hit it. Time to talk Blues Brothers, our full spoiler discussion of the film, doing a deep dive. This is one of my favorite comedies of all time. And if you haven't checked this one out before, you're not sure if it's for you, go back, check out the primer episode where we don't talk any spoilers, spoiler free in that episode, and figure out if this movie's for you or not. I think it probably is, but
Yeah, it's so quotable, so enjoyable, and has a little bit of everything.
it really does. It really does. And I think that being said, let's just dive right into it, start in front of the camera, working our way back. Let's start with the opener of the film, the prison sequence and everything going on there. It's a cool setup to the movie. We've got Jake Elwood locked up in prison, getting released early for good behavior after serving 3 years in Juliet in Illinois. What's really cool about this sequence is it sets up the characters pretty well. It sets up, we get the full view of everything that Jake brought into prison with him because they give everything back, which is a really funny scene in and of itself.
I got the quote here.
Okay, go ahead.
One Timex digital watch, broken. One unused prophylactic. Looks disgusted and picks something up with his pen. And then one soiled. One black
That
suit.
always gets me because the first one
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, and then the second one you're not expecting it.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know, a prophylactic is a condom. So he had one unused condom, and then one soiled, and then one black suit jacket, one pair of black suit pants, one hat, black, one pair of sunglasses, $23.07. And then he actually has a few more things in the extended version.
Oh really?
Yeah, I forget exactly what it is. I have it up in front of me, but yeah. Anyways.
Fair enough. Yeah, and so up until this point in time, there's no music. For a musical movie, it's dead silent until Jake walks out of the prison. He's let out, and his brother meets him there, and that's where the music starts, where it's like da-da-da, da-da-da, and we get like the screenshot of both of them, and they do the hug, and we're together with the boys, like kind of thing for the first time.
Yep, and we see like the tattoos leading up to that as well, and then we get right into the new Bluesmobile.
Yeah, so we're catching up with the brothers, and it's just kind of filling in background story about the characters, right? Like what these characters have been up to leading up to this point in time, talking about the Bluesmobile, talking about trading the old Bluesmobile in for a microphone. And Jake's ripping Elwood apart for getting this new car when the old car was pretty sweet. And then, we get like this crazy car jump off of the bridge kind of thing, which is awesome.
Yeah, and like that just sets up a little bit of the ridiculousness of these two. Like they just, what is it? He just wants to show off like why the car's so good.
Yeah.
Because his brother's ripping it apart. He's like, watch this. And then just jumps a bridge.
Yeah. He's like, Elwood's like, you don't like it? He's like, no, I don't like it. And he's like, so he's like, all right. And he just like rips it and they go over the bridge. And he's like, car's got a lot of pickup.
Yeah.
And then he's just like talking about the car. He's like, it's like got a cop motor, cop tires, cop suspension, cop shocks. Like basically like this car is souped up, and these two are about to have like the craziest adventure in this car.
Yeah, it's a model made before catalytic converters, so it'll run good on regular gas.
Yeah. It's so quotable. It's such like it. This is one of those cars that's kind of like a famous car from movie history, right? Like the Bluesmobile.
Yeah.
There's lots of recreations of the car out there. Like it's up there with the General Lee and the Ghostbusters car, like that sort of stuff. It's pretty memorable. The Batmobile, like it's in the discussion. It's not quite the top, but it's in the discussion for pretty cool movie cars.
Yeah, like it's the Bluesmobile.
Yeah. So we get the introductions, the characters. We go to the orphanage because, as Elwood put it, he promised the penguin, the head nun, that they would go visit her when Jake got out of prison. And this is in my opinion, the funniest scene of the whole movie.
Them
This is the
walking up
scene
the
that gets me
steps.
cry. Well, them walking up the steps is amazing because
Yeah.
it's like, it's like the power of Christ is like working in paranormal ways throughout the orphanage,
Yeah.
which is awesome. But then they get up there and they talk to the penguin about the orphanage that they grew up in potentially being shut down, how they needed $5,000 in order to save it. And so this is the setup for the whole film, right? Like it sets the plot going, like that these two brothers need to come up with this money in order to keep the orphanage open.
Yeah, and it also sets up that they usually come from, like, they steal money, or like the
Right.
money that they have tried to give to the orphanage before is like dirty money, and the nun is like not having that.
Yeah. So it sets up like who these characters are. Like, they're living in the gray area of the law, and oftentimes on the other side of the law. They're just two guys who can't really, not really great at following rules.
Yeah, and then they, like, right after that, they get pulled over by the cops, and we see on
Oh,
there.
I gotta stop for a minute here and say, well, my favorite moment of the entire film is like when they're swearing, when she pulls out the the stick to like hit them. Yeah, and they're both swearing, and then Elwood gets up and he's like, oh, fuck this, and he gets up, and then like Jake is like literally stuck in like those little like desks that you would sit in as a kid. I don't know if you've ever been. So when I was in grade 8 going into grade 9, I went to my sister's grade 6 graduation, and I tried to sit. Even in grade 8, I tried to sit in those little like desks that you would
that you
sit in
slide
as a kid.
into, and like the desk is attached to the chair.
And let me tell you, when you're growing at that age, those desks, you grow out of them very quickly. And so like I kind of understood like Jake's struggles getting out, but then he like, he's like trying to like get out of there, and he rolls down the stairwell and just smashes it at the bottom. Like that whole scene is perfect. I cry like every time I watch that. It's just so funny. It's such good body humor, right? Like physicality.
Yeah.
Really reminds me of Chris Farley, like something like Tommy Boy, that kind of thing. Like it's just everything in that scene really comes together for me.
Like as soon as they are told to sit down and the chairs are off to the side and they go sit there, and she's like, I meant like in front of me, come here. And then they have to scooch over in the chairs. Yeah, like there's so much in that one little scene. And then as they're like turning to leave, the nun like fades, like just slides back, hovers backwards, and then the door closes. Yeah,
it's incredible. I love that scene. It's the highlight of the film for me. The musical numbers are awesome, but that scene always gets me.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's where that's when you start to get the vibe of this movie, right? Like this movie has so much energy. It's moving at a pretty good pace. Like we get into the next scene where she tells them to go to church to figure it out. Or actually, no, sorry. They're talking to Cab after this, Cab Calloway, and they're again more exposition, who they are growing up and everything. And he tells them they've got to go to church, and so they go to James Brown's church, which is like one of those like classic, like what I would picture to be like the American South kind of like African American,
like gospel soul church. Yeah,
exactly. Like just so much energy, everybody having like an absolute blast, singing like the hymns and all that stuff, and the hers and everything else. And it's at this scene where they figure it out, right? Like the beacon of light, and he's like Jesus H, tap dancing Christ, I see the light. when Jake gets hit with that light. And they figure out that the way that they're going to raise this money is by basically saving the $5,000, or finding the $5,000 by getting the band back together and playing like some shows in over like a course of a few days to get this $5,000.
Yeah, and that starts the mission from God.
We're on a mission from God.
And that's where like his Dan Aykroyd's like Canadian accent really comes into like that unique delivery of God.
yeah, for sure. So that really starts the whole movie at that point, and then we're open to it's a recruitment movie, getting an ensemble cast of musicians together. Every sequence of that is awesome.
Yeah, like they just act ridiculous when they're trying to get their one friend who got a really good job at a restaurant as a maitre d'.
Yeah, and so he's at like a really fancy restaurant, and they're like, "We're not gonna leave until you agree to come play with the band again."
Yeah, and they just start being like crazy ridiculous in front of all of these like high level fancy guests.
You know what? One of my favorite ones is when they're getting the what are they called? The magic stones back together,
Mm.
and so they watch them play, and then they sit down with those guys, and Willie Too Big Hall is like, "So Jake, you're out, you're free, you're rehabilitated. What's next? What's happening? What you gonna do? You got the money you owe us, motherfucker?"
Yeah, yeah.
He's like so happy, and then he gets so mad, like on a dime. It's just a sequence, like it's just like one scene to the other, like kind of thing, and setting up the comedy really well, really effectively.
And then when like they go back to the men's hotel, and that's when we first see
You got my cheese whiz, boy.
yeah, but and Carrie Fisher just use a rocket launcher to try and hit them, and then everything explodes around them to the entrance to this hotel, and they just brush themselves off and walk in, no discussion.
They literally don't even react. They're just like they jump, and then they stand back up, they kind of brush themselves off, and they walk in. They don't even look around. They don't even look to see who did it. Like, just completely like, that just happens in our lives sometimes.
And it was such a ridiculous thing to see Carrie Fisher just randomly do with no context. Like, you don't get any context until
like way later in the film.
Yeah. And then Elwood is just making dinner, and it's a piece of white toast.
Yeah.
White bread toasted.
Yeah, they're in like this, like you said, it's like a men's hotel. It's in this really
sketchy area.
Yeah, like there's the train is like right at his window, and Jake's like, "How often does the train go by?" And Elwood's like, "So often you won't even notice it."
Yeah, and then they just keep them just running by. I don't know how they film that. Like,
so actually, fun fact for that is a very small note. They actually, every time the window is shown on screen, a train goes by.
Yeah, like just constant.
Yeah. Literally constantly. Yeah, and so it builds that, and then we get the car chase scene, which the first of like several car chase scenes. One of my favorites of the film too, when they're basically they get pulled over by the cops. Elwood's got a bunch of fines and parking tickets and everything.
He's got 116 parking violations and 50 regular driving violations or something, and his license is suspended.
And so, Jake's upset because he's just got out of prison. He doesn't want to go back to prison. And Elwood just rips it. And their cop car just absolutely rips it out of there. We get the car chase that goes through the mall, which is epic. Such a crazy car chase. Little detail here. One of my favorite little details of the film is the two main cops driving behind them. Their facial expressions don't change the entire car chase. They're just like, kill it. Like, did you notice
even
that?
when they're upside down?
No, not those two guys. The other two guys, the black dude and the other dude. They're just like,
oh, that was them. Okay.
No, it was two other guys.
Huh.
Yeah, the two guys. Yeah, they flip. Like, it's just chaos. Like, you almost can't believe they were able to film it like that in a mall, because they destroy everything. There's people in the mall running around while it's being shot. Like, it is pure chaos.
And it just keeps going, and it's after a second you're like how does this just keep ramping up or staying at the same pace this whole time for this like long ass chase?
Yeah. So they eventually make it out of there, and then that's when they go back to the men's hotel. Yeah, we talk about all like getting everybody together. We get our first like gig where Jake and Elwood are trying to figure out where they're gonna bring the band to play, because obviously this is all just like off the cusp happening kind of thing. So they drive like several hours and end up at a country bar.
Yeah.
And say that they're the Good Old Boys, the band that's supposed to be arriving.
Bob's Country Bunker. They're like, "Oh, what kind of music do you guys usually play here?" And they're like, "We have both kinds, country and western." Yeah.
So they start playing like music for everybody who's shown up. I love that they're in like a little like chicken wire cage.
Yeah.
Which is really good for them because
it's necessary. Yeah.
It's very necessary. Like, everybody's just throwing bottles at them and stuff. Especially, when they get started too, and the music is not like what they're expecting kind of thing. So they switch into Rawhide, which, you know, if you've listened to the primer episode, you now understand how much more talented Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi are than you and I.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we get that. Oh man, I wrote down this song.
Yeah. Oh.
The Sometimes It's Hard to Be a Woman song.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorites just because it's like so unexpected.
They're like making everyone like fall in love and cry and like.
Yeah, Stand By Your Man. That's a song.
Stand By Your Man. Yeah. And like that's when we first get to see them perform, and we're like they're ridiculous on stage, and but they're actually pretty good singers.
Yeah, like I'm not a country fan, but I love both of those songs, especially their rendition of it with, you know, the all of the brass and all of the horns and everything. And when they start playing Stand By Your Man, Jake calls it, you know, it's the favorite of the horn section, and none of them actually are playing. They're all just singing background in the back.
I didn't notice that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. This is what I mean. This is a really good movie to rewatch because you're going to catch like little comedic details because
everything's a joke.
Yeah, everything's a joke. Everything's really fleshed out. Everything's so ridiculous in this film. Like, there's just so much to appreciate in this film.
And then at the end, they're like, okay, what about pay to Bob? Yeah. And he's like, well, the gig was for $200 and you drank $300 worth of beer.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we didn't get charged for the first drinks that we got, so we thought everything was free.
Like complimentary for the band. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, unfortunate misunderstanding. They decide that they're going to run away. They don't tell the band either that they're not getting paid, and B, they actually owe money.
Yeah.
And at that exact moment too is when the good old boys actually show up. Not only are we creating like all of these really awesome comedic moments, but we're setting up like all of these adversaries to Jake and Elwood's mission, right?
Oh, adversaries. Yeah.
Yeah. I said it wrong. That's typical of me, but
yeah. And who was the main character of the Good Old Boys? Because
that was he is actually a famous actor. I forgot to mention him. It's Charles Napier.
Yeah. Like I recognized him instantly just from watching old movies. Like he was like a face of like the 80s.
He was in Rambo.
70s. Yeah. Oh, yep. He was Colonel.
Yep.
No,
he's in Silence of the Lambs even.
Really? Oh, that's amazing. There's a good connection.
He's one of the cops. Yep. Yeah, for sure. I was going to bring that up, actually, and I completely forgot. He was in Austin Powers as well. He's Commander Gilmore, but, you know, plays, like, cop authority types, right?
Yeah.
Very recognizable face. But, yeah, playing the Good Old Boys lead singer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're setting up all of these enemies. Like, we've got them, we've got the police officers, we've got this mystery woman, Carrie Fisher, and then we get to the Nazis as well. I hate Illinois' Nazis.
Yeah, just ridiculous. They get stopped at a bridge that, like, is all backed up because random Nazis are doing a protest or something, and, like, they're full Nazis. They're not holding anything back. And they're just like, I hate Illinois Nazis. And then they just peel out off the road and then try and run them over. They all jump into the water and they're like, we're going to kill those guys.
Yeah. So, you know, we set up another enemy, the Nazis, which, you know, like the police officers, they're just doing their jobs, whatever. Everybody else, like, you know, just unfortunately in the way of the Blues Brothers at this point. But the Nazis
just don't give a fuck.
Yeah. Nice. It's so nice to just stick it to the Nazis in this one.
Yeah.
They get the hall, they get the band back together, they get their old producer to set them up, to set up a show kind of for them. And so they just go out and advertise it, and like they're driving the Bluesmobiles everywhere with like the massive sound system on top.
Like the amplifier, speaker, whatever.
Yeah, which also alerts literally everybody to the fact that they're going to be there, including all of those people we mentioned before that have it out for them.
Yeah, so funny. And then they run out of gas.
Yeah, and then they run out of gas.
And then when they make it to the gas station and Dan Aykroyd is like hitting on Twiggy.
Yeah.
He is so Canadian during that scene. Like,
yeah,
just so Canadian. It is so funny.
Then we get our first musical number at this point in time with Cab Calloway doing
Minnie the Moocher. And it cuts to like Cab Calloway's like big stage at like a fancy place.
Yes, I love that cut.
Yeah,
really
because
cool.
like it threw me off when they switched back, and I was like, oh, okay, like this, because it wasn't actually like he's not being Cab Calloway, like he's a different character, but then they actually go to like, yeah, anyways.
It's
Interesting
really
little
cool.
thing.
It's a really cool rendition. It's actually a unique rendition of Minnie the Moocher as well. There's some slight variations to the original song that he did. He actually preferred this version as well, which is really cool. Something he did for the movie.
I thought he was gonna try to do a different version, and they shut him down. And they're like, you have to do it closer to the original.
They shut him down for the recording on the soundtrack of the film. But
okay.
In the film, he forgot some of the lines and ended up kind of improvising a little bit of the song. But it came out better. Like it's a really great song. Like, so I was gonna ask you actually, what your favorite song or musical number of the film was, because for me this is the one. Cab Calloway's rendition, I always like. Minnie the Moocher always really hits for me.
Yeah, like that's probably it. That and Boom Boom by John Lee Hooker, like that was already one of my favorite songs, and like is my favorite blues song. So seeing that just randomly, like not expecting it, was awesome. I didn't like Aretha Franklin's. It was okay, but
yeah, it was okay. It was definitely like the most shoehorned in one, right? Like it, and more like plot heavy kind of a song than it was just like a good song.
Yeah, but that scene when they go to get Matt Guitar Murphy. So we see her and their ridiculous order for food that just tips off their old band member that they've come in. Like he's like, I want, what is it, 5 chickens and 1 can of Coke, and then Elwood just wants like white bread toasted.
Yeah, white bread toasted, nothing on it.
No drink.
No drink.
1 Coke.
Yeah, and Matt Guitar Murphy's like, oh, Jake. Oh, Elwood.
Yeah,
the Blues Brothers.
That was awesome. And like, yeah, as soon as I saw him, I was like, that guy has to be someone that I don't know that just is like crazy famous or something from that time.
Well, and all of the actors go by their real names, right? Or all of the musicians go by their real names.
Do they? Oh, I didn't know. I didn't notice that. Like, Aretha did, or like.
Well, I'm not sure if they called Aretha Franklin by name because she's Matt Murphy's husband or wife.
Yeah. But yeah, like Ray Charles has like Ray's musical supplies or something. Yeah. I wonder if that was. Do we know if that's his act? Like, did Ray Charles have?
Oh no, that wasn't Ray Charles' music store.
Okay, I was gonna say that'd be like kind of cool, but him putting up the poster upside down, like, and just like looking proud of himself, looking at it, and like he's excited for the show.
It's like the 3-blind mice in Shrek.
Yeah.
Really, really great use of Ray Charles there. Just really great in general. Like when he shoots at the kid.
Yeah.
For trying to steal from them.
Yeah.
So legendary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So everything comes together in the end. They get the money. They actually sign a record deal.
I don't think they follow through with that. They just wanted the money.
Probably not, because they go to prison too afterwards.
Yeah.
And then we get the craziest car chase of movies up until this point in time. They crash something like 100 cars.
103 total for the movie, I think.
Yeah. It was probably like 60 or 70 for this chase alone.
Yeah.
It's a wild car chase. Like,
oh yeah.
You can tell they're going like 100 miles an hour too. Like this wasn't like, sped up like when Mike and I watched Mad Max 2.
Yeah.
There's like a moment where there's cars, you can tell they're kind of sped up. No, they're driving 100 miles per hour through the streets of Chicago, which is wild.
You really get to see like the classic things in Chicago, like under like the bridges for the subways, like you know what I'm talking about, the trains and stuff like that. And then out on the highway, and the like the head cop or whatever is in a truck, like he flies into a truck with his car. Like so much crazy stuff. And then even them just leaving and Elroy used his glue from the factory that he quit earlier.
Right.
One of the extended cut scenes is Elwood quitting the factory. Did you see that?
Yeah. No, I didn't see that.
And
I don't
so
have any context for that.
yeah, so he goes into. Oh, so you might not have seen the glue on the cars?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so there's this whole other like little tiny subplot where Elwood quits his job in the morning after they wake up in from the like men's hotel, and
Because they're on a mission from God.
yeah. And he goes to quit his job, and he tells his boss that he's leaving to become a priest. And then he worked at like a glue and solvent factory, and he gets some like cans of spray paint style glue, and it's like super glue, and he glues the good old boys their pedal.
Oh, yes. No, that scene is in there when he glues the pedal, but there's no
Okay.
context for how he got that glue or anything.
Yeah, okay, so we see that in the extended cut.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
yeah, so like that just all the cars backing into each other and then driving off, that was awesome.
Oh my god, the fact that they crashed that many police cars, like they were literally rolling on top of each other.
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
like a dozen of them. And then the Nazis are chasing after them too. They drop that car like
Yeah. That was
hundreds of feet
ridiculous.
in the air.
Yeah.
That was honestly. So I was not expecting, and this goes into effects of filming a little bit, but I thought it was one of those like model cars to scale, whatever. They dropped it from a height, like something like a Star Wars kind of effect.
Yeah.
That was a real car that they dropped from a helicopter.
That's what I thought. Like it actually looked too real, because some of the other scenes like were a little crazy, but like that one, yeah, I'm surprised. 1980 Christopher Nolan did.
Yeah, 100%. True. Yeah, there's some really cool, like, the stunt work in this movie is awesome. We get to the concert. In my opinion, this is the only small nitpick that I have with the movie, is that I could have used one more song at the concert. I wanted one more song with boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
We only get really like one full song, and then they dive into the second one, and that's when they make their escape. I think one more song to really get the crowd going, get the like police off their guard.
But they don't give a fuck.
No, they don't. They don't care.
It's so them.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. Leaving me wanting more.
Yeah.
So the Nazis, like, and everything, and then eventually, they get to the county office. They give the $5,000 to Steven Spielberg, and then they're arrested with like 1 million people. I love that scene too, because everyone's like, hut, 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 hut.
Yeah. That was
It's like the military police show up.
Yeah, how did they get so many people for this like ridiculous dumb movie? They got like
thousands of people in this
thousands of people
Extras.
thousands of extras. Like that was ridiculous. That I wonder, that wasn't a record or anything, but like that probably should have been for a comedy movie.
Yeah, but like the budget of this film, like they ended up spending almost $100 million worth of like today's money making this movie.
Yeah.
It's wild. Like, I can't believe that this movie came to be as what it is.
Yeah, the hut, hut, hut. That was so funny. I was laughing pretty hard at that.
Yeah. And then everything kind of wraps up, and we get the last scene where they do the Jailhouse Rock from prison, which is awesome. Such a cool rendition. Like, that's one of my grandpa's favorite songs. Like, my grandpa's a big Elvis guy, big blues guy, and I know he loves that tune, so... And that's where the guy from the Eagles is in the crowd.
Oh,
He's one of the
he?
first guys to jump up onto the tables.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the movie. There's a weird little tidbit here that I was reading that there's actually only 3 times in the entire movie where Elwood takes his hat off. That's when he's going to sleep, when he breaks the window, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then when the Blues mobile falls apart at the county office.
Right.
And then Jake actually only has it off like in the opening sequence, and they don't even show his face. And then he takes his sunglasses off the one time when he has his heart-to-heart with Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
In order for them to get out, basically.
Yeah.
Like, he tricks her.
Yeah.
But he's like staring at her like with his eyes. He's like, oh please, oh please, oh please.
It wasn't my fault, I swear to God. Was that scene?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, he's just like making up all these crazy things.
Yeah. She doesn't believe him, and then he just like takes his glasses off, and he's just like staring at her with his sad puppy eyes. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Like, oh, please don't kill us. Please, please don't kill us. You know I love you, baby. It wasn't my fault. And like, I ran out of gas. I had a flat tire. I didn't have enough money for cab fare. My tux didn't come back from the cleaners. An old friend came in from out of town. Someone stole my car. There was an earthquake, a terrible flood, locusts. It wasn't my fault. I swear to God.
Yeah, that's when we find out that he's actually left her at the altar, and that she was his ex fiance.
Yeah, yeah. That, like, I was laughing so hard, and then his face, like, he's like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Incredible scene. Is there any other like really like top of the top moments for you that you want to talk about plot wise or anything?
oh, the backwards car flip that they just randomly did in that
Oh
final.
my god. Yeah, because at this point, like all of the craziness. This is like the precursor to Fast and Furious, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's another legacy to this film is the Fast and Furious series, especially the later ones. As shit gets more and more.
I was gonna say, like Fast 10 or 20, whatever they're on, is probably like just based on this car chase scene.
Yeah, we're
But
just
on the
rehashing
moon.
the Blues Brothers, like a musical comedy that just happens to have some of the best car chase scenes in film.
Yeah, I think just like finally hearing the it's 106 miles to Chicago, like that whole line, like that's what I knew about this movie before I went into it, and just like going through all this craziness and then seeing that was like, it was nice, it was awesome.
Cool. I'm actually surprised that the Blues Brothers doesn't get quoted as much as I would expect it to, right? Like, Ghostbusters has very quotable moments kind of thing. Some of those other classic films of that era, like Christmas Vacation's kind of in a league of its own, but you get the idea. Like the 80s comedies, like there's still so many quotes from that group of movies and that group of comedians that this one feels like a little bit of a hidden gem, honestly.
Yeah, like that's where again it's not super easy for modern audiences to want to put it on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was gonna ask you, what kind of scenes? What did you think didn't hold up in your opinion?
The Aretha Franklin one, we could have just cut that out, except like not her singing. Maybe I just don't care about her. Maybe I should.
I have a lot of respect for Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
She's like the queen of soul. She's the mother of rock and roll. Like
I think what it was, I read into it a little bit after too, that she was completely not used to lip syncing
yes.
a performance because it's a movie. So that completely threw her off, and I could feel her uncomfortability through the screen. So maybe that's just like a personal thing that took me
and that's
out.
valid. That's
Yeah.
valid, right?
So like, but that's not really like. I think it's just because I watched the extended cut. Things felt too long, and like I am good with old movies, and like watching Scarface, like it's long, but I get so into it. And then with this one, I think like I did watch this with Annabelle, and I could tell like when she was like, okay, this is going on too long, and I'm like into it, but like that also took me out. So
well, and that's understandable. Like I would definitely recommend that you check out the theatrical version first. And I think if you're a massive fan of this movie, you go and check out the extended edition. There's very few like extended editions that I would recommend like for a first time viewing, really, right? Like out of all of the ones I can think of, like it's maybe like Blade Runner,
Waterworld.
Yeah.
Waterworld's one for sure.
And Kingdom of Heaven, like those are really it for what you should be watching first as extended.
The Lord of the Rings.
I don't know if you watched the extendeds first. I think you watched the original theatrical for those.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, watching first but like it depends on how into movies you are, I guess. Like I feel like you could watch just like how I feel I could watch any theatrical cut and fully enjoy it. Yep. Like I think if I wasn't watching this with my partner, I would be fully invested. It's just like I could tell it'd be. So this is where if we were to like show this to Kelvin, he wouldn't be able to stick with it because he's not used to being in that mindset of watching an old movie.
Yeah, maybe. Like, and that's where it's an interesting experiment that one of us will have to do at some point, because
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of this one. Jess is a big fan of this one, but because I don't have the experience of sitting with somebody who isn't into old movies as much, I just don't know if this holds up like a Ghostbusters does, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Because Ghostbusters is in my opinion, the like relatively close comparison film
I agree. Yeah.
of the era anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk score for a little bit. And I really, again, Minnie the Moocher highlight for me. Cow Calloway actually recorded this in the 1930s, if you believe that.
Yeah.
Almost 100 years ago, which is wild. The original chorus lyrics were "Hody Hody," where now it's "Hody Hody Hody Ho."
Okay.
Yeah, so like you said, we've got Boom Boom, Jailhouse Rock. Like it's all of these classics of blues and jazz from the 30s through 50s, 60s era. There's a lot of connections to the real musicians that we talked in detail about in the primer episode. All of the musicians who make appearances in the film. It's just a solid score all around, right? Like this is I could listen to the Blues Brothers soundtrack on repeat probably throughout the day, honestly.
Yeah, like I actually want to listen to the full thing just without the movie, because there's so much crazy shit going on. Like unless it's like one of the musical parts of the movie, it's hard to pay attention to the rest of the music. Like is there like what's the song when they get into the blues mobile? I don't really remember.
Right.
You were referencing it, but yeah, that's hard for me to catch, I guess. But yeah, like John Lee Hooker was my favorite after Minnie the Moocher, I think, because Minnie the Moocher was so perfect, but like John Lee Hooker is just awesome. And that was cool that they actually recorded him in that market. Like that was a live recording.
Yeah. It was pretty sweet.
Because he was old as hell too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like a lot of these people, like, and this is what constantly blows my mind, is a lot of these people were born in like the early 1900s, right?
Yeah.
Like these are people from a different era of human existence, essentially.
Yeah, like he was born in 1912, John Lee Hooker.
Yeah.
Actually, that or 1917. They're not sure. There's a range between which he was born.
Huh. That's super weird. Yeah, I'm reading that right now. Interesting. What a time to be alive. Like this, can you imagine making a film in 1980 with people who were born in like 1900 and now like, this movie is over 40 years old, but it's really quite a connection to the past.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. It's a time machine within a time machine for us.
Yeah, it really is. It's such a cool connection to the past. Sequels, prequels, and reboots. So we've talked a little bit about how the Blues Brothers was originally created at Saturday Night Live. It's an original. They started with a band.
Did you watch any clips of that?
No, I didn't get around to that, actually.
I really want to. I'm going to after this. I bet they have some good clips.
I believe their first performance was actually when Carrie Fisher hosted SNL, and so they were like the musical act. Like the Blues Brothers were the musical act for
That's so
episode.
Cool.
So yeah, how they're kind of connected. Actually, Dan Aykroyd at the time was actually dating Carrie Fisher, like while they were together.
On set, she was choking, and he gave her the Heimlich maneuver.
Right.
And then they got engaged.
Yeah, because of that. So I had no idea that him and Carrie Fisher were engaged at a point in time. Like obviously it didn't go so hot, but but it's just so fascinating to read about that. So yeah, so beginnings Saturday Night Live. There's a whole lot of like extra source material after this, because this is like one of the most important movies of the 80s. It ends up on a lot of like best of movie lists from the 1980s. And so unfortunately, John Belushi passed away at 33 in 1982, and we really didn't get, the sequel or more music from the Blues Brothers that we probably would have gotten if that wasn't the case, because they actually did release a sequel to this in 1998 called The Blues Brothers 2000, which stars John Goodman in the role of John Belushi, like just as a different character, basically a different brother of the Blues Brothers, and it came out to very poor reception.
Apparently, it's a really good soundtrack to listen
Yes.
to, but not like the movie was shit.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but like at the same time, John Belushi is just such a comedic heavyweight, right? Like
Yeah.
he himself, just everything about him, his persona, the way he can like, drop a punchline, like he's
Mm.
just he's the master at what he does. Like there's a reason why people still talk about John Belushi to this day.
And we didn't even talk about how crazy of a partier he was, which led obviously to his death. But like all the antics on set.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that right now. Effects and filming, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, basically, like the one story that I absolutely loved was John Belushi just didn't show up for filming one day,
Right.
and so Dan Aykroyd like goes out into the like streets to find him, like, and he sees one house with a light on, and he went in and was like ready to be like, "Hi, I'm Dan Aykroyd. I'm looking for John Belushi," and then he just walks in, and the homeowner's like, "You're here for John Belushi, aren't you?" And he's like, yeah, he just showed up and asked if he could have a glass of milk and a sandwich and then crashed on the couch. Yeah, so like that's just right off IMDb, but like such a funny, like he was so big at that time that he knew he could do that kind of stuff. I think that's where Bill Murray got his like ballsiness from.
Well, and John Belushi, like he's so beloved, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to think about the time period this is in. SNL is the biggest show of the 70s, right? Like it's the biggest show to start in the 70s. John Belushi is the main guy of that era, up with Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd and the rest of the group, Bill Murray for the one season. Like such so impactful to American comedy of that era. And so if John Belushi shows up at your house, you're giving the guy a sandwich.
Oh,
for
fuck
sure.
yeah. Yeah. Just for the story.
Yeah. So I actually had another story from filming from John Belushi. He was nicknamed around set as the Black Hole because he lost hundreds of sunglasses throughout the filming. He just would put them down and then like he would lose them like instantly. And so they just like had like hundreds of extras on set to give him every time he put him down.
Again, he was just like his character. Like he didn't give a fuck.
No, he literally like the scene where he rolls down the stairwell. Like my favorite scene, like he severely hurt himself like doing that stunt because he did it himself, right? And so he was like he legit was in a back brace and on painkillers the rest of the film.
Yeah, I had no idea, and that he's still dancing around.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man, crazy other John Belushi story from this. The day before they were filming Jailhouse Rock, and he's doing like backflips and stuff. Like
Yeah.
he is literally the first iteration of Chris Farley.
Yeah.
And so he's doing backflips and everything. The day before, some kid gave him a skateboard to use, and he ate shit on the skateboard and like messed his knee up. So they like he wasn't sure that they were gonna be able to film that scene. So they got a doctor in and like filled him full of like special drugs and painkillers and like everything, so that he couldn't feel anything for that scene, so that he could do it.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Like no wonder he had. Like, I feel like he was just getting hurt on purpose at this point.
Well, and a little bit, like a slight segue too, like the drug use on this set was extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the budget was literally a cocaine budget for the cast and crew, which is, actually not unheard of for this era specifically. This is probably the high point of cocaine in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So literally everybody's on cocaine. Any scene that's shot at night, every single actor is on cocaine. They literally were like using cocaine to stay awake and like stay with the same amount of energy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's ultimately the thing that killed John Belushi, was overdosing from a mix of cocaine and heroin. But this is just such a cocaine fueled movie, and you can kind of feel it a little bit, honestly, too. Like just the energy is cocaine basically throughout the film.
Yeah.
Which, it's a little sad too, in hindsight, understanding. It's very sad in hindsight, understanding the struggles that John was going through. Like, there was a point in time where they actually hired somebody to be John's cocaine buffer so that he wasn't doing as much cocaine on set. Like, they were trying to get him to stop and everything, and at one point John Landis walked into his truck and he was like, I walked in and it was literally like a Scarface mountain of cocaine at the table. And that's when John Belushi actually like broke down and was like, hey, like I do have a problem. Like I need help kind of thing. So it's John Belushi's life is really tragic. I guess what I'm landing on with that.
Another Chris Farley comparison, and
yeah. It's just actors like that, man. They're lightning in a bottle. They burn really bright and really short.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. Like, you never want to see that, especially with like your idols like that. Like, Chris Farley is one of my favorite actors of all time. Like, if I see Tommy Boy, I'm pretty much obligated to watch Tommy Boy. It's one of my favorite comedies for sure. So, let's talk some other like maybe more uplifting or interesting effects and filming stuff. I looked up the mall scene because I was like, how are they able to film this much destruction in a mall, basically, right? Because it's a fully stocked mall. Like, it looks like a legitimate mall that they're driving through.
Yeah, like JCPenney, everything.
Yeah, they have everything. And I love how they're commenting that throughout the film too. Like, they're like, oh, I didn't know that was in season, or they've got that in here. What? This mall's everything.
And like, they just so nonchalant about all the crazy shit that they're doing. like nothing matters to them. They're just like, oh, look, like we should try that.
They actually filmed this at the Dixie Square Mall in Harvey, Illinois, which actually had closed down the year before. So while they were filming, the community thought that they were actually refurbishing the mall and going to reopen the mall to the community. And so they were pissed afterwards. Like, they actually like went to court against it, even though like they never agreed to restore this mall or like, set this mall up again kind of thing. But just because of, all of the stuff going on with this movie, things got crazy around the mall.
That's insane. I was so curious about the mall story because it was so pivotal, really.
Yeah, so they bought all of that stuff too to fill the mall up. They bought all of it to fill the mall up on wholesale, and then they just returned anything that wasn't destroyed, basically.
That's amazing.
Other kind of related to filming set stuff. Let's talk some of the other vehicle stuff. So when we were saying how like the car chase scene through Chicago, like they're driving at high speeds, they were literally driving at 118 miles per hour in the Bluesmobile through like the street. Like, they actually got special clearance to drive 118 miles per hour underneath the overpass.
Wow.
Yeah. So they actually did it twice. They filmed it twice. The first time without any actors or anybody standing around, and they didn't think it looked legitimate enough. So when they got all the extras to like wander around and like, jump out of the way and everything. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. My God, that's so fast. Like, was that kilometers or miles?
That was miles per hour.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
There's a deleted scene about how the Bluesmobile has some magical qualities as well.
Ooh.
And so basically, like, where Elwood parks the car, it's beside like some kind of crazy electrical generator for the city or something like that, and it's like sapping energy from it, and that's why it can just keep fucking going.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, and like they did realize like this is too over the top.
Yeah. Like, this is a goofy movie. Like, this is a very SNL type of movie where things are just like, surreal, like pure surreal, like the authentic use of the word.
Yeah.
and on the note of like, having the pedestrians, having to film it a second time with all the pedestrians, that actually happened throughout the film. Like, all of the car chase scenes, they basically filmed twice without people and then with people, because they were like, it just doesn't look good.
Yeah. Did you know that the Blues Brothers was deemed a Catholic classic by the Vatican very recently?
Yes, I was gonna bring that up in Legacy, actually.
Shit! Yeah,
it's just a nice wholesome movie, like I said.
I never follow the structure of our podcast. You always keep it on track. Sorry about that.
No worries. James Brown. I got a funny story about James Brown on set. So he was actually driving one of the Bluesmobiles on the way to one of their sets, and he got lost. And so he stopped at a gas station to get directions and was arrested by the police because like his car wasn't actually, it was a prop car, so it didn't have like actual license plates on it.
Did they know it was James Brown?
No, they didn't know it was James Brown. He convinced them to let him call them, and so he called the production company, and they were like, "We need that car," and like they didn't even really care about James Brown. They just wanted the car.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, so I mentioned earlier that the Nazi car that they dropped was a real like car that they dropped from the air. They actually had to like get a special clearance from the Federal Aviation Administration to do that. So they had to do like practice drops to see if the car like would drop the way they thought it was going to, because they actually, like I said, they dropped it in the city there. They legitimately dropped a car like that from a helicopter.
I didn't know that it was actually in that city. Like I thought they must have filmed it. Like I didn't look that deep into it. That's crazy. Where in the city?
Wild.
Like how? Yeah. Like blowing up the hotel. She blew it up the second time.
Oh yeah, well she actually blows it up.
Yeah, like demolishes the whole building. Again, so ridiculous because they were blown up and like the rubble's covering them. They get out of the rubble, and then the police officers get out of the rubble after. So they were just like laying on other people, and like you could tell all those bricks were so fake.
yeah. It's so.
But
funny,
like it didn't matter. It doesn't matter when you're watching it.
This is a movie that you have to suspend disbelief, right? Like,
yeah.
I look back at the times. I just wanted to quickly mention like the time period in which this came out, because it kind of blows my mind, honestly, is that apparently in the American South, a lot of theaters just flat out refused to show this movie because because it was so like focused on jazz and black people, and like, you know, a lot of their stories. Like, this is a culturally significant film towards black music, right?
Like celebrating it. Yeah,
exactly, right? So there was a lot of like backlash in that sense originally, which is, you know, it's actually, that's the only like thing that didn't age well, really, is the backlash that this movie got when it came out.
Well, that's good.
The legacy of this film, so we talked about how many cars were destroyed during this film, 103. So it only held the record for 2 years, and then a movie called The Drunk Man came out, which wrecked 150 cars. Then the next movie to actually surpass that was The Matrix Reloaded, which destroyed 300 cars in that really epic car chase scene on the highway.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, you mentioned the Vatican, which is awesome. That's it is a wholesome movie, so it kind of makes sense that they would be okay with it. The connection to Ghostbusters here, obviously Dan Aykroyd, but John Belushi, the part of Peter Venkman that Bill Murray ultimately starred as, that was written for John Belushi. So we would have had him in that role, which would have been a very different movie, but you know, it would have been a John Belushi movie rather than a Bill Murray movie, right? So
they're like brothers in comedy anyways, but like it is.
Yeah. Like Bill has like his own, you know, kind of like asshole kind of persona, but Roger Ebert, I want to say that he gave this one 3 out of 4 stars, saying that like the energetic music numbers were highlight and how epic the car chases are in this movie. So recognizing both of those, and he just loved like John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd's portrayals of the Blues Brothers. Thought it was really fit the movie really well. Gene Siskel, like Roger Ebert's counterpart, actually gave this one 4 out of 4. Said this is one of the best comedies ever made. So 100%. I don't always agree with Gene Siskel, because we were talking about him on Silence of the Lambs, how he hated that movie. And this is one of the times where he got it right.
There you go.
Yeah, he actually said this is his number 8th movie on his 10 best movies of 1980. So,
man, I wish I could have been in the theater. Like, if I could have a time machine to one time and place, it would be 1980 with a time machine into a movie theater, just to go back to watch movies like when they first came out. The feeling would have been so cool.
1972-ish to like 1983-ish. A real good era for movies.
Very good. Yeah, it was like the first. Well, there's many golden eras, I guess. I don't know what they call it specifically.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
Well, and like this is the thing is we don't have straight comedies like this anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
we had them in the mid 2000s to early 2010s, and that was really influential for us because
Yeah.
we grew up like with Jonah Hill and Seth Rogen and Will Ferrell, right? But you know, we don't have the same kind of comedies, and I think part of it is just because a lot of like the mainstream films, like the comic book movies, all have like they're hammy, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of comedy in all of them, and so now to be a comedy, you almost have to have like more going on.
Yeah, like the lines of genres are so blurred. No one's just making a comedy or
Right.
especially comedy anymore.
Yeah, so films like this I think are like pretty honestly sorely missed, but it just they're also not necessarily always big money makers either, right? And
Yeah.
the other thing I was reading about actually, and this is still a legacy bit, so I'm continuing on my tangent and I'm not sorry. But the other thing is movies today have to appeal to global audiences to make the most money, right? Like we're not
Yeah.
making movies on a 10 to $30 million budget and hoping to make like $102 million. We're making movies that are like $100 million to $250 million, and they have to be appeal to people in the U.S., people in China, people in Italy, people in like South America, like worldwide, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a harder demographic to appeal to, and I'm actually a big fan. I'm becoming more and more of a fan of foreign cinema, and so it's kind of disappointing to me too because every culture brings their own little bit of spice to their movies, right?
Mhm.
So why
Yeah.
can't we have more movies that have cultural significance to a certain audience, right? And you can appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, like Parasite is the biggest
Yeah.
recent one, and it's but again not a comedy or anything like that. I would love to see some comedies from other countries.
Yeah, yeah, we should maybe do a comedy sometime. It'd be interesting to see, how a comedy holds up if it's not in English. Like would you do the dub? Would you do the subtitles? Like
Yeah,
how would you
yeah.
approach it? But maybe, that's an idea for a future pod. Our personal reviews and the partner factor. So I guess I'll start with this one because I hyped this movie up quite a bit. This is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely in my, like, probably in my top 20 list. It's my favorite comedy up there with The Big Lebowski. I can watch this movie all the time, constantly. Like, I think The Big Lebowski is my favorite.
Mm.
That one's just special to me, but this one will be like a very close second. Like if The Big Lebowski was rated number The Big Lebowski is in my top 10, and The Blues Brothers is in my top 20. So I guess that's where I would draw the line probably. It's just a great movie. It's such a landmark. Like the musical numbers, like I just I get really into the music. That's the thing is I think that also makes it rewatchable, right? Is because it's got all these really good music to it. Like it makes me want to listen to more jazz. Like I'm always saying that I want to listen to more jazz, and so this is kind of a good excuse to get into that world a little bit whenever I watch it. The cars, like it's a low-key like car chase movie.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of action going on.
Yeah,
So
like if you don't know what you feel like watching, you could watch this and get a little bit of whatever it is that you
yeah,
couldn't figure out what you wanted to watch.
yeah, like yeah, it's a comedy, it's a musical, it's an action film. Like yeah, it's got a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Jess is a big fan as well, so we're a big Blues Brothers family. So
And Indy?
oh yeah, musical numbers, she's tapping along.
Yeah.
What about let's hear your review.
Yeah, so I just am not as big of a comedy fan, really. Like, I don't seek out comedy movies too often.
Mhm.
If I do, I'm looking for something like top notch. So, I would say like this isn't gonna hit my like top 20 just because I don't love comedies the way I love so many other genres. But for my comedies list, it's probably like yeah, again, top 20 of my comedies list. I don't know that I could consider it like there's some movies that just hit me right, and I don't think this one really did. I really enjoyed this movie, but I'd pick a few other ones ahead of it, I think, which kind of sucks because like it is such a classic, but I don't have to love it. So
Yeah, That's completely fair. Like,
Like when I think about recommending a movie, like the way that I think about where I rate a movie is, would I watch this to my future, or would I show this and watch this with my future children, and like at what point? Like,
right.
because there's so many movies I want to watch with my kids at some point.
Right.
And this would be probably like a year or two into them watching serious movies with me. I don't know.
Yeah, and part of the thing with comedies as well is there's some element of you had to be there with a comedy, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of comedies are a creation of their era, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if 16-year-old or an 18-year-old would necessarily like Step Brothers as much as we did.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you really have to set the stage properly. So like you couldn't just show someone Blues Brothers. I think you would have to watch something else first that is similar, and then bring them to it, and then when they watch it they're like, oh, now I get all those references, or now I get like why John Belushi was so great. Like I see the connection, and like, so you would have to watch Tommy Boy before you watched.
Yes. Oh my
this.
God, Tommy Boy followed by this. Oh my God, you just made my night.
Yeah, and like
It's my
that's
dream watch.
yeah, like that would be a great like Sunday
Double feature.
comedy double feature.
Let's line it up right now.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I'm real into that idea.
Let's watch it next Sunday at the like
at the
after
hangover party.
Yeah, after your wedding.
Yeah. That sounds so fun. Yeah, I think this is a classic, and I would recommend it to a lot of people. I think you're right, though, that there's certain audiences that are going to really hop on this, and other people are going to enjoy it, but not necessarily connect as hard to it as I did.
Yeah, like, and we've been into movies to like a fairly deep degree for like our whole lives. Like we're movie people, so it's so much easier for us to sit down and watch one of these like types of movies and fully enjoy it, because we understand like some of the context of what's going on and like where it led after that.
This is kind of a slapstick kind of comedy, right? Like it's not necessarily witty humor or something like that, you know? Like this is much closer to a Tommy Boy or Anchorman or something like that along those lines than it is like The Hangover, for example.
Yeah. I just thought of an amazing thing to do for our, like the website, like how, like I would want to. So how do you introduce someone to the Blues Brothers? First, you have to watch Anchorman, and then you have to watch Tommy Boy, and then you can watch this.
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like
there's
that.
a bit of a rite of passage to get to something like this.
Yeah,
I agree.
To fully enjoying it, yeah.
Yeah, to fully appreciating what this movie means to so many people and what John Belushi means to so many people, right? Because like I said, so many people remember him so fondly, and he's discussed so fondly even today, and yet he doesn't have a whole lot of movies that he was involved in because of his short lifespan. Like the only other movie that I've really seen him in is National Lampoon's Animal House, and to be honest, like I don't think Animal House holds up nearly as much as the Blues Brothers does.
I would have thought it would have, just because there's always been the there are modern movies that are not super modern, like it's like the first American Pie kind of, right?
Right, but I don't know. We would have to do it on the podcast, but in my opinion, it just the comedy doesn't quite hold up. It's a lot more mean-spirited than this film is.
Yeah, that'll change the enjoyability for people today.
Exactly. And then, yeah, otherwise, like the other movies he's really known for are 1941, which Steven Spielberg's comedy that didn't do so hot. I haven't seen it before. And film Neighbors, which is also John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. And again, I don't think received a whole lot of love. But actually, you know what? It has. I mean, Roger Ebert loved it, so it could be all right for movie buffs like you and I. But I don't know if everybody's that's gonna appeal to everyone. I think honestly, I think if you wanted to understand John Belushi, this is the movie to check out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Annabelle also liked this movie and was like down to rewatch it because she had watched it like years ago in like a film appreciation class,
Cool.
and at university, I think. And then or her brother showed it to her. I forget. She whatever, but she liked it enough to rewatch it. And she doesn't love old movies, and but yeah, she's had like the few slow bits where she's like, "Come on."
I think you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't like the Blues Brothers, but to have this like the high level appreciation is not going to be everybody's like type of movie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There are going to be very few people who are like, it wasn't that funny.
Exactly. Yeah, like it's enjoyable for anybody, really.
Physical comedy, I think, is a type of comedy that does transcend
Time.
generations. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah.
All right, I think that's it for the episode. I think that's where we should wrap her up. So it was a great episode. It was good getting to talk to you, do an episode together again.
Yeah,
Been a
yeah.
while.
I'm glad to be back. I'm sad I missed the Silence of the Lambs one. I've read all those books.
That was a great episode. You're gonna have to re-listen to that one because we had a lot of fun with that episode. A lot of fun with that episode.
Yeah, yeah. I want to reread the books and then maybe I'll do like a write up. That's one thing I'd like to do for content.
Cool. Yeah, for
Anyways.
sure. Yeah, I think that's it. So as always, go tell your dad about us.
Yeah.
Especially this one. This is gonna be a dad classic for sure.
Oh yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
We're on a mission from God, is all I want to say.
It's so good. It's so used. Like, I love how it keeps coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
We're on a mission from God.